Hi, Devlog again. Earlier I posted this message here where I found this test that I had written that takes 1.9 minutes to fail. That's unacceptable in my books. What we need to do here is to figure out what's going on and how to fix it. And it's caused by a bug that occurs when you are in a universe and you set a proxy URL that is invalid. When you do that, the logic within Resonite will continue trying to make a request like a bunch of times. I think it's like 10 times before failing. And so what happens is that first request to say like, hey, are you allowed to be in this universe? That fails and it keeps retrying. And that's what adds 2 minutes to the startup. So now I have a test that proves, hey, that 2 minutes is going on. We can now take a look at it and fix it. And we can fix it without even starting up Resonite because there's a test for it. As this area of the code base is basically just like a HTTP request runner, I thought I'd show you what I'm doing. Some of this code might seem simple for some of you, or you might learn something. Let's do it together. So over here, this is our request runner, and you can see up here we've got some error handling here. So a good example here is if the exception that we get back from a HTTP request is task cancelled exception, what that means is that it's timed out. Before I added these two lines in a recent change, there'll be lots of logs for the exact same reason. So it's more of the same stuff. Point being is this is error handling. So if we take a look at the failing test says an error occurred while sending the request, system web exception, unable to connect to the remote server. But there's a bunch of arrows here. And what's this showing you is it's showing that there is a chain of exceptions going on. And I want to show you that in the debugger. So the way that we do that is we can make something that will enable it to be debugged. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to say, hey, is the exception, the root cause of the exception here, which is HTTP request exception. So if the exception is a HTTP request exception, which we can call HTTPX, then here we can do something about it. And that's great. So what we should do there is figure out what to do. But what do? We've got all these arrows. It's very difficult to figure out what we should do, when we should do it, because of all these inner exception chains. So what I actually want to do is I want to look at this exception in the debugger. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a unilog line, blah. It doesn't really matter what's going on here. It's just a place for me to know that we've hit exactly where I want to go, and then I can breakpoint it. Now we can go over here to the Tester Explorer, right-click Debug. That's going to recompile the relevant parts of Fuchs Engine that are required to run this code. Launch us into the debugger. None of this requiring Resonite or Unity or anything like that. And we're down here. And what we can see then down in this watch column down here, and I apologize that this is so small, I don't really know how to make it bigger, is HTTP exception, and we can expand it and we can take a look at it. And what we can see is that the chain of exceptions is found in this inner exception thing, and it's like a tree where actually exactly like the output, right? So each exception has an inner exception going down like a tree. And so if we go all the way down to the bottom, we'll see that the bottom here is a socket exception. And that the socket exception has the error code 10,061. You can also see that the socket error code is connection refused. Let's take a look at that. That's a data type. I think that's probably an enum. So we're going to go ahead and sort that out. So I'm going to go ahead and hit stop here. Going to go back here, and what we need to do is get to that base exception all the way down the end of the tree. And luckily, there's a method in C# called getBaseException. Cuts out the middleman. It's going to get us all the way down to that base exception that's right down at the bottom. And we know that that exception is a socket exception. So we can rename that to socket exception. And then we'll put socket exception here. And then we can say, hey, if the socket exception dot socket error code was the enum that we saw, equals. And then we get an auto prompt because IntelliSense is just amazing. And it says like, hey, did you mean any of these? And then all we need to do is we need to figure out which one we need. But we saw it in there. It was connection refused. And then we can break. What this will do is it will prevent this retry logic from happening. You can see here that we're doing while not success from remaining retries minus minus greater than 0. Instead, we're saying here, like, hey, we know this isn't going to work. Let's break out and error down here. And this is where we actually handle returning the error, catching more exceptions, and stuff like that. So now if I go ahead and rerun this test, you'll see that it took 2.7 seconds to fail rather than the original 1.9 minutes to fail, which is fantastic. Now, I'm going to write some more tests here, make sure that socket code isn't used for anywhere else. Like, for example, I'll try connecting without a proxy to an invalid domain, stuff like that. Just make sure that the logic is clean, and then that should allow what's going on. We don't need to do any other handling here in the API runner, because what will happen is all of those requests will fail quickly now because it's not doing the retry, and then Resonite can continue running, and that hang will now no longer happen. And just like that, I've saved 1.9 minutes on my startup time in the event that I misspell a proxy URL. I hope you enjoyed this. See you soon.